Greetings, Earthlings! I'm Agent Random, and I'm here to tell you about an ancient time before recorded history. The ancient time of 2002. At least, I think it was before recorded history. I'm actually not sure. I wasn't born until the following year. 2002 was apparently a time known for great change and movie sequels. But one of the weirdest little oddities that people may still remember from this time was a game called Kingdom Hearts. It's a game that was well loved when it first came out, but not often talked about so much anymore. It's very dearly remembered by those who played it back when it first released, and nostalgia has kept its small community alive to this day, even if there really hasn't been any new Kingdom Hearts content since 2002. Every now and then you still see pushes on Twitter to get a Kingdom Hearts 2 made, which just goes to show how passionate this game's small community is even 20 years later. So today I want to ask what happened to this game. Where did it go and why is it so fondly remembered? What happened to Kingdom Hearts? Or I guess the first question is, what the heck is it? Well, for starters, it's a PlayStation 2 game, if the pure crustiness of this footage didn't give that away a while ago. It was developed by Square Enix, at the time known as Squaresoft, the developers of hugely popular games like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. Kingdom Hearts was supposed to be their big new real-time action RPG, but with the weirdest gimmick. As you might have noticed, there are Disney characters all over the place. This game was a crossover between Disney and Final Fantasy, starring a bunch of OCs. And when I say that, it's not hard to guess why only one was ever made. But believe it or not, the concept actually worked. Let me briefly go over the story, which, fitting for a game with a Disney cast, is charmingly simple. The game followed the original character Sora. For some reason people still think this guy's gonna get into Smash one day. He lives on his island with his friends Riku and Kairi. But one day, their island is attacked by these black creatures called the Heartless. Heartless are creatures with no hearts, I think, so they try to steal the hearts of all the people they come across, and sometimes entire planets too. Otherwise known as mass genocide! Or at least as mass genocide-y as you can get in a game with Winnie the Pooh. Console limitations actually really work in the game's favor here, since most of the overworlds are totally devoid of NPCs, since everyone's probably getting massacred by Heartless just off-screen. You know what, I bet the real reason they didn't make any more of these games was because they'd have to render like a ton of NPCs from the overworld for a sequel, since at the end of the game all the Heartless go away and everyone's hearts are restored. Anyway, Sora winds up becoming the one singular, individual, unique, exclusive, sole, chosen wielder of something called the Keyblade, which is admittedly a really cool idea for a weapon. It's a key sword that's main gimmick is being able to open any lock. It's also really nice that this is the weapon of the protagonist of a Disney game. It's pretty blunt, so I don't see this thing like chopping up buildings or anything as extreme as that. The Heartless wind up making Sora's island go kablooey, and he gets stranded on another world. There he meets up with the Donald and Goofy. These two act as your party members throughout the game, since Sora's looking for his friends Riku and Kairi, and Donald and Goofy are looking for Mickey Mouse. Although, they are sorta useless. Donald never heals you, but I'm sure that would have been fixed in a later installment, if it actually existed. The three go off on a journey to visit a bunch of classic Disney movies in search of their friends. Long story short, they find all their friends, learn that the big bad behind everything isn't Maleficent like they were led to believe, but actually some scientist named Ansem. And Maleficent dies and never comes back, because what role can she really play in the plot after you introduce Ansem? Sora battles Ansem and tells him that there's no way he's taking Kairi's heart. They bash Ansem's face in. We learn that the title of the game is actually in reference to some door. Mickey Mouse also has a Keyblade, which is maybe a plot hole, I'm not sure. And Sora, Goofy, and Donald get stranded in a field where they run off for new adventures that they'll never actually have. Having played the game in preparation for this video, I found the story to be pretty fun. Its original characters are all really lovable. Sora's such a good boy. He does die for a bit at one point, but he comes back pretty quickly. No way would Disney let the protagonist stay dead for any longer than a couple minutes. Riku's kind of an edgy boy and screws up pretty hard, but he feels bad for it, so it's all okay. He gets possessed by Ansem for some amount of time, but he manages to totally free himself of it by the end of the game. Kairi's really spunky, and that's nice. She could maybe do with more screen time though, because she does spend most of the game in a coma. I really wish we got another game, if only to see a story where Kairi's personality traits are really allowed to shine. And even though this is a game where Goofy is one of the lead characters, it actually has surprisingly deep lore. There are these items called the Secret Ansem Reports that detail the villain's research prior to the game's events. If you wanted to, you could use these to speculate on some of the more unexplained stuff from the game. Like, Ansem has a Heartless symbol on his chest. Does that mean he, like, turned himself into a Heartless? I don't know, probably wasn't going to wind up being that important anyway, cause he dies at the end. Now, I haven't ever played Final Fantasy, so I haven't really mentioned those characters too much. I probably didn't enjoy their cameos as much as an actual Final Fantasy fan would, so please excuse that. But I appreciated their inclusion still. For the most part, they just cameo in the original worlds. But the Hercules level does let you fight Cloud and later on Sephiroth. By the way, shoot, this fight is hard. Dude sent me to Quadratum more times than I could count. What's Quadratum? No clue, not sure why I said that. I guess that I may as well talk about the gameplay now. For the time, it's pretty good. It's nothing hard, barring a few fights in particular, but it is just as deep as you'd expect from a Square game. From what I can tell, it's kind of like a prototype Final Fantasy VII Remake. This game really seemed to have everything going for it. So why then did it die out? Well, it's hard to say for sure, but the director, Tetsuya Nomura, has made a few comments on the game since it released, giving us a better picture of what may have been happening behind the scenes. In short, the IP for Kingdom Hearts is entirely owned by Disney, so even though Square seemed to want to make a second game after making the first one, they were unable to without Disney's approval. Well, kind of, because I do think that at one point there were pretty concrete plans for a Kingdom Hearts 2. Because later that year, there was one other much more obscure release for Kingdom Hearts that ended up being very telling. Exclusive to Japan was a game called Kingdom Hearts Final Mix. I didn't play this one since I can't read Japanese, but according to what research I could dig up on this game, it was sort of like an expanded version of the original game. It had new cutscenes, a bunch of new enemies, keyblades, a harder difficulty, and even lets you play as Cloud, though I wasn't able to find any footage of that part. Sorry. There's also a ton of these weird events they added, moments that leave you with more questions than answers. For example, if you go back to the Hollow Bastion level of the game, you'll find this nerd in a black coat. He pulls out some lightsabers or something and proceeds to be what looks like an extremely intense boss. I probably would not have survived this, but if you manage to beat him and do a ton of other optional content, you'll be met with a full trailer for what we can only assume was supposed to be Kingdom Hearts 2. I mean, come on, this whole fight is way too epic to be for anything except Kingdom Hearts 2. Oh, and yes, technically there was another similar, smaller trailer in the original version of the game, but for the sake of this video, we'll be looking at them together as one package. The trailer shows us this city inhabited by more of those black coat people. One of them pulls out 2 keyblades. Sorry, I think I coughed in the middle of that line. You know what, we'll just keep going. And then proceeds to fight a bunch of Heartless, and then fights some Yorha looking dude. Meanwhile, a ton of words fly across the screen. It all ends with Mickey Mouse being revealed to be one of the Blackcoats. Now, none of this ever got explained, so you could say it would be a complete waste of time for someone to sit here and speculate on what will never be. And I agree. So that's why I'm bringing in an expert, so 2 someones can sit here and speculate on what will never be. Yes, that's right, I'm bringing in the world-renowned #1 biggest Kingdom Hearts fan and leading Sora shoe size investigation expert, Venforia.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Venforia, and I am most definitely not named after a Kingdom Hearts character.
I'm not sure why you felt the need to say that. I don't remember there being any Vens in the game.
Yeah, but I like to make sure that's how I get introduced anyway, you know?
Whatever you say, Ven. So you've had about 20 years to chew on this trailer. What sort of interesting details have you been able to glean from it?
Well, the trailer itself is titled Another Side, Another Story Deep Dive, and one of the quotes in the trailer talks about those who do not exist, or in other words, nobody. So, that's probably the name for these black-coated people. Maybe they're just called nobody.
Ooh, do you think this whole world is like some sort of alternate reality of non-people? Like a sort of unreality?
You want me to tell you what I think? I think that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. You stupid, bumbling moron. You absolute buffoon. You stupid, dumb son of a... Do you want to hear an anti-stupid idea? Take a look at the city. It looks kind of weird, like it doesn't belong with the rest of the game, don't you think? Looks like it was ripped straight out of something like the critically acclaimed movie Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, winner of the honorary Maria Award. So, what if this other side is a universe that has us travel to Square Worlds with Disney cameos?
Interesting. And that really makes me wonder about the characters that we see. Most theories seem to suggest that one of them may be a reborn Ansem, but nah. We see him get vaporized by Kingdom Hearts itself. There's no way that he could appear again. The hairstyle is clearly Riku, so this is undeniably Riku. And it's much harder to tell, but I want to say that this is Kairi? Maybe? Or if you squint a certain way, it could be Sora? Any ideas who she might be?
I don't know. It's really hard to tell. And these two aren't even the only mystery characters in the trailer either. There's also this girl with brown hair on Destiny Island. Let's just say that it's Sora's mom. I mean, he was probably gonna go home and eat his dinner eventually, right? It's been a while since his last meal, and I'm sure any person should eat on at least a semi-regular basis.
These quotes are also super bizarre. I can't even begin to come up with ideas for what most of these mean.
I'm with you there, but there are these three really interesting ones in particular that are just inherently cooler than the rest. Where's Sora? You're the source of all Heartless, and Sora, why? My theory is that in Kingdom Hearts 2, Sora would probably become the new Ansem, because Leon says earlier in the game that Heartless are drawn to Sora and the Keyblade because they fear it. Those Heartless sure are drawn to the black coat with the Keyblades. So, what if Sora used that power to control the Heartless? Evil Sora game. Come on, baby. You know you would want it.
I'm pretty sure that anyone watching this video desperately wants any new Kingdom Hearts content. It's been a hot minute since they've been fed.
That's true. Anyway, for my final message, change the world! Goodbye!
Okay, I guess he's gone now. We'll just move on then, I guess. In the years that followed Kingdom Hearts' release, the world had no choice but to move on without it. Tetsuya Nomura later went on to try and do more things outside of mainline Final Fantasy, but often struggled to find success. He was the producer on an incredibly obscure game on the Nintendo DS called The World Ends With You. It went basically unheard of amongst the greater gaming community, but it does look interesting, I guess. Maybe I could cover it more in a future video. There are some rumors that Square once tried to get it to cameo in a larger game like Final Fantasy to draw attention to it, but that never happened. But hey, at least that game came out. The same can't be said for another one of Nomura's next projects, Final Fantasy Versus 13. This game got so deep into development hell that the final product wound up being called Final Fantasy 15 and wasn't even directed by Nomura. In the end, he wound up working on Final Fantasy VII Remake instead. Like I mentioned before, the combat is a little reminiscent of Kingdom Hearts, so I wonder if this is what Kingdom Hearts would be like if it got a new game today. Kingdom Hearts never really seemed to leave the mind of Nomura. A year after the game was released, he shared this quick sketch. It almost gives me the vibe of like a 2D Kingdom Hearts game. But weirdly enough, Kingdom Hearts seems to be cropping up more and more recently. Here's an example. When the game first came out, its main theme was sung by Japanese singer Utada Hikaru. Yeah, that Utada Hikaru. Insane as that is aside, she performed the opening song, Simple and Clean, at the recent Coachella 2022. Furthermore, for Kingdom Hearts' 20th anniversary, Square released a recreation of its box art but with Cloud instead of Sora. Even Disney seems to be remembering that Kingdom Hearts exists again, with Mickey's Keyblade being shown amongst the mouse's other relics in a recent House of Mouse episode. Even Taco Bell fondly remembers Kingdom Hearts apparently. All of this could mean nothing, but I want to have hope that one day we might get to see this game continue. And who knows what it'll look like now. Square might give the game hyper-realistic graphics or something wild like that. But whatever the future of this game looks like, if there is a future, I can't wait. And if you're a fan of this game who spent the past 20 years starving for new content, then let your voice be heard. If we can get these companies to know how badly we want a new game, then they might just listen. If you're a longtime fan of the game, let me know in the comments. Tell me about your memories of the game or what you want to see in a sequel. I'm really interested to hear from you guys. And with that, the door is now closed. Thank you so much for watching. Also, special shout out to Venforia for invading this video, as well as Xanthan for being the real Kingdom Hearts expert involved and proofreading the script. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.